now it's a special edition of Talking Transfers. We are live, so is it Talking Reds, is it Talking Transfers? We're definitely talking. Either way, it's John Gibbons. I won't shut up. I'm joined with Paul Gorst from the Liverpool Echo. We're here on transfer deadline day. A slightly quiet transfer deadline day at the moment. When you said you come in, Paul, I thought there might be a few more things sort of flying around, but aside from a bit of Kanté madness last night, it's been a bit quiet on that front.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that Liverpool supporters are used to, isn't it? You know, transfer deadline day where it's all a bit quiet, and the only thing you're kind of waiting on is maybe a loan deal for a youngster here or there, and in a way, that's kind of what you want. If you're a football club, you don't want to be dashing around the continent on a mad dash, kind of, you know, we need him, and nothing comes off. Liverpool very much kind of take a little bit of a backseat, don't they, on transfer deadline day, and generally that has served them so well in recent years. But I think this time, same circumstances, but it's a little bit different in terms of perhaps should they be involved in a little bit of a mad transfer deadline day scuffle for, you know, a central midfielder or whatever it is. So, you know, same kind of outcome the fans are used to, but different reasons for why, I guess, this season.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to come on at the end to talk about an article that you've written today on well, it's about the sporting director, and there's been links to Paul Mitchell, and you know, you talk about Julian Ward and the idea that he is gonna do the job right to the end, and they sort of back him to do that rather than sort of bringing someone in earlier. But you say in the article that, you know, the feeling in the past when we didn't do everything, even though there was probably a bit of disappointment because we love transfers, was, well, Liverpool are this really well-run club, so we got our business done early, and we let everyone else who's not as, you know, prepared as us sort of scurry around, as you put it. But now you just don't sort of get that impression, you know, rightly or wrongly, you know. We're not there sort of, you know, day to day, you know, no matter what people think, you know, sort of seeing it, but it just feels that, you know, with the outgoings and with the, you know, people who are likely to leave as well coming up, that Liverpool's maybe not quite that well-owned machine that they have been in the past.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, they brought in Gakpo, didn't they, very early on. You know, the news was broken on Boxing Day, wasn't it? And Julian Ward kind of, you know, intense negotiations with
sacrificed his Christmas.
He did, you know, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and it was all done and dusted. And then, you know, Gakpo was announced as a Liverpool player as early as they could, and that is kind of how Liverpool have tended to do things, haven't they, in recent years. They don't tend to get involved in any madness on deadline day. But as we say, maybe this year was the chance for them to, you know, change that a little bit out of necessity, really. But it obviously looks like they're not going to be doing much, and Jurgen Klopp's become increasingly more agitated as that question's been put to him over the month. So his final answer on Sunday after the Brighton game was just no, wasn't it? You know, not expecting anything, it's all good. This squad is as it is type of thing, and we're certainly not expecting that to change before 11 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Amo knows in the comments here has put just we are ninth, and that's the other sort of difference, isn't it? Yeah, you know, it's not just the fact that, you know, there's the turmoil. I mean, that's, you know, maybe an exaggeration, but, you know, there's the uncertainty amongst the club in terms of how it's operating, you know, right at the top, really. People sort of stepping down, people moving away from roles and sort of things like that. But the fact that this season clearly hasn't gone to plan is maybe the season where you do go, well, actually, is there someone out there who could, you know, make a bit of a difference for us? Now, that was obviously the Arthur Melo plan, and that didn't work. You know, we've had you know, the last time the Liverpool season wasn't going to plan, they did two centre-halves late, and neither of them really have any impact. You know, Ben Davies doesn't play at all, and Kabak, you know, does okay, but clearly isn't sort of at the level. So maybe sort of, you know, the bit burn from that. But it does feel like if there was ever a season just to take a bit of a flyer on someone, you know, it does feel like it's this one.
Definitely, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, as the comment says, Liverpool are ninth, and they are ninth for a reason. There's certainly several things that have gone wrong on the pitch. Yeah, I mean, you look back to 2021, Liverpool brought in Kabak and Ben Davies. That very much did feel like they were desperate, didn't it? A lad from the Championship who never kicked the ball, and a lad who come in on loan and didn't, you know, Liverpool didn't even take up the option to take him for half of the original price. So that didn't work out. Maybe the fingers had been burned from that. Last January was Luis Diaz, kind of in the final week, wasn't it? And that was done pretty much because Tottenham had made advances, and Liverpool wanted to make sure that they were there ahead of Tottenham. Maybe they feel that the players that they've got lined up for the long term aren't available this month, which, you know, is fair enough. If they do have the heart set on a certain Jude Bellingham, then that's fair enough, I guess. But yeah, it does feel as though maybe a little bit of a gamble could have been taken, and it hasn't. And obviously the proof will be in the pudding where Liverpool finished at the end of the season. But certainly I think this month was the one to kind of speculate to accumulate, really, and they've opted not to. Gakpo aside, and it's a bit of a major gamble, and we'll see how it transpires.
Yeah, there's an interesting story breaking, not from a Liverpool point of view, sort of unfortunately, but you know, someone's mentioned it here. I talked to Paul about it just before we went on, which is Sabitzer, who's at Bayern Munich, who did really well at Leipzig, isn't getting this game at the moment. United going for him, bit of talk that, you know, they'll let him go out on loan. And listen, I haven't watched a huge amount of him recently. You know, I remember seeing, you know, his goals at Leipzig and stuff like that. But, you know, I don't think I've ever watched him sit down and play for sort of 90 minutes. But, you know, he is someone of a certain calibre, obviously. He's at Bayern Munich. And if he did go to United and do well, that would be one that people would point to and say, see, players were available and you just decided not to.
Yeah, no, it's difficult to argue against it, isn't it, really, when you see Liverpool really struggling in the centre of the park. You know, Stefan Bajcetic has just played 3 games in a row there. And,
yeah.
You know, he hasn't done poorly by any stretch of the imagination, but he's only 18, and you're asking him to probably play again on Saturday against Wolves, and that is kind of a bit of an indictment of Fabinho and Henderson. And what I found interesting actually was the Brighton game on Sunday was the first time since Fabinho signed in 2018 that neither of him or Henderson have started for 3 successive games. So that shows you how important they've been, and also how Klopp has viewed their recent form, that neither of them are starting games.
I think how long he keeps Fabinho on the bench as well is quite telling. You know, I think we probably, a lot of us thought, I'll get to 60 and we'll see him. He does the 3, and Bajcetic ends up doing 80 odd minutes really. And then when Fabinho comes on, well, you wish he'd have sort of done a bit longer. But I thought that was telling to me. Not that he keeps picking, the sort of same chord again, but just how long, you know, he was happy to have Fabinho sat alongside him. Yeah,
and especially when, you know, Bajcetic is clearly flagging as a young lad who's been thrust into the elite level, hasn't he, at a time when Liverpool aren't playing well, and being probably unfairly asked to pull up trees. So it is a little bit of an indictment of both Fabinho and Henderson, to be fair, I think. You know, a little bit of a kick up the backside, and, you know, you haven't been doing the business for me lately, so you can sit on the sidelines. But yeah, when you see, you know, United linked with the likes of Sabitzer, it is kind of, Liverpool don't need this kind of perfect archetype midfielder who's going to completely change formation. They just need a bit of experience, a bit of quality, just to steady the ship. And then when the injuries come back, hopefully you'll see a little bit more confidence in the team and build from there. But for whatever reason, Liverpool have chosen not to get involved.
There is, you know, one story emerging. It's not a good one out of AXA today, which is this injury to Ibrahima Konate. It's a real blow, because he's been one over the last few weeks, you know, since the World Cup, certainly, where you say he has been close to his best. You know, there's obviously, you know, struggles across the pitch at the moment from a Liverpool point of view. Not many who you'd say, well, you know, they're in good form. Konate is one of a very few, and so to lose him for a period, you know, up to and maybe even including this Champions League game against Real Madrid, a massive blow. Yeah,
it's a crying shame, isn't it? At a time when Van Dijk's out as well.
Yeah.
You know, Matip has been out of sorts. I think Gomez has had a really poor season. You know, as much as I like him as a player when he's at his best, don't think he's been anywhere near that. So it's a massive concern. But it kind of ties in with Konate's season. I'm trying to think of how many starts he's made. Certainly before the World Cup, it wasn't many at all, because he had that injury, didn't he?
Well, he had a similar situation at his last club as well, doesn't it? It was one of the warnings when they bought him. Yeah. He does miss a few games.
Yeah, I mean, I think last season he was fine, wasn't he? I don't think he missed too many games. It was just whether him or Matip were chosen for certain games. But yeah, it's another kind of hammer blow for Liverpool, isn't it? You know, injury-wise, so many key players out. Van Dijk, Firmino, Jota, Diaz, and now Konate. Liverpool just can't seem to catch a break. You know, certainly this season, there've been so many players who've missed so many games. Can't think of anyone who stayed fit all season, really. Maybe Salah, Alisson, but at least someone at some point has missed games through injury. And Konate now at a vital point of the season, just as Liverpool are going to start playing 2 or 3 games a week again. It's a massive blow, and he's been Liverpool's best defender this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, I would say that is correct. And the knock-on effect from a transfer point of view, it looks like the Paul Nat Phillips is I say Paul Nat Phillips, he's probably got quite a nice life, playing for Liverpool every now and again and stuff like that, but wherever it looks like he might be moving on and it might be time, something seems to happen and it's like, oh, sorry, Nat, you've got to stay for a little bit longer. I mean, listen, we don't know what offers have come in and stuff like that. It might be a case of the best they've had is a loan with a view to buying, and they think, well, if that's all anyone's offering, then he might as well sort of stay here and be covered. But at the same time, it does feel like at some point, we need to all move on with our lives a little bit. Liverpool need to have, enough defenders there that, aren't relying on someone who we've decided, isn't at that elite level we needed. He wants to go and, be a regular for someone, and it just seems to be that we get to these points that we're like, oh no, we need it for the next 6 months, which doesn't feel like planning amongst everything else.
Yeah, I think we're going to be sitting here in 2043 talking about Nat Phillips on deadline day.
Yeah.
He must just be walking through the revolving door, mustn't he? When he thinks he's moving out, he's called back
Packed
in.
all his stuff, yeah.
It's like Abe Simpson, isn't it? He walks and just comes straight back in. Yeah, he's someone who's been wanted by loads of clubs in over the last few years. Leicester, Newcastle, Burnley. I'm sure there'll be a few more in there as well. I think Benfica were talking about
Benfica last summer as well. It was Galatasaray chat this
window, it's just so unfortunate, isn't it, that these injuries are coming just as he's about to pack his bags and leave. I think even going back to possibly 2018, 19, he was going to leave, and injuries kept him from doing that as well. So he doesn't seem like the type to ever kind of rock the boat and be overly disgruntled, but surely he's thinking, when am I going to actually go and play a few games? Because he's good enough to, isn't he? I don't think he's quite at Liverpool level playing every week, but certainly he's proven that he could do a job a little bit further down the league, where the demands of winning every week aren't quite as intense. He's a very sturdy, dependable, solid centre-back, isn't he? And there's a few clubs who would be crying out for that, I'm sure. But Konate's injury, Van Dijk is still out, isn't he? So, Liverpool are only one issue away from, if they were to allow Phillips to go, recalling Fabinho back to centre-half, and I don't think anyone wants to see that again, really. So, yeah.
It might suit him a little bit more at the moment,
yeah,
to me, who knows?
Yeah. It's a shame for Phillips. I'm sure he's desperate to move on, but sometimes the needs must, I suppose.
We're going to have a little bit of break here at the moment. Just want to show you guys a little clip from a show we did this morning, me and Neil. Injuries is one of the topics. This was before the Konate announcements, but I asked Neil if you could have one injured player back, who do you think would have the biggest impact? He might change his mind now. I'll go upstairs and ask him and go for maybe getting Virgil van Dijk back. But he went, we thought, well, you wait and see. Here's the clip now. Which of the injured Liverpool players makes the biggest impact coming back?
Jota. Not for me, it's not even a discussion. Liverpool have had a big issue all the way through the season, and I think it actually begins to become a little bit of an issue at the back end of last season. Even though he's fit, I don't think he's fully fit, and he's not back at full form. It's scoring key goals in games, especially the opening goal. Jota scores loads of goals at 0-0, at 1-1, and at Liverpool being 1-0 down. Loads and loads and loads and loads. And for me, it's Jota. It's just Jota all day. I'm not brooking conversation on the matter. I think it would be good if we want to count Henderson and Fabinho as injured in some way, shape or form. If one of them, for instance, found legs to play football again, that'd be no bad thing, but it is just Jota as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how he uses him, because obviously he's having a bit of a go at Gapco at 9. We're seeing Núñez a bit more left. It'd be interesting to see sort of where he plays him and those two fitting around him, sort of, one or sort of both of them. I don't know.
It's the Anfield Wrap from the gorgeous beating heart of the city. All the audio, all the video, all the writing you could ever ask for. Download the app, dive in.
So if you enjoyed that and you want 9 more topics and 9 more minutes, that is available for you on the Anfield Wrap app. So make sure you download the app, or you go to theanfieldwrap.com/subscribe and all the links from there. Loads of great audio and video content on the Anfield Wrap at the moment, and obviously all around the games that are coming thick and fast, as Paul said before, after this little sort of transfery break where everyone sort of have a breath. But yeah, soon be back playing league games, Champions League games as well, and looks like it'll be sort of going with what we have, and that's what it sort of looks like. You know, it seems to be happening at the moment. It's interesting. Michael over there asked the group about availability and who might be a possibility, and a couple of people mentioned Sander Berg, who's just an interesting link really, and just to ask you about that before we move on to talk about a couple of others, because it feels like even before he went to Sheffield United, the Liverpool were monitoring him. Now I'm sure they monitor a lot of players, but he's one that they've seemed to have liked, and hasn't seemed to pull up too many trees at Sheffield United, but still has, a fan club somewhere at Liverpool.
I think he played, was it in the group stages in 2019-20? Was he playing for Genk at the time? Played against Liverpool. And I think Sheffield United paid decent money for him, actually. It was about 25 million, something like that. Yeah, someone who's never really truly gone off the kind of rumour mill, has he? I'm surprised to see the links re-emerge. I haven't really kept up with them too much since Sheffield United were relegated from the Premier League, but whenever I've seen him, he always seemed to have a little bit of everything about him. He wasn't someone who kind of, you could see was instantly exceptional at a certain thing, but he was big, he was strong, he got about the pitch, decent passing range, and just a bit of a, an all-purpose central midfield, if you like. And I say I haven't really followed them too much since they were relegated from the Premier League, but seems to be back on the radar, doesn't he? It's I just wonder whether how down that pecking order he's dropped since, there might have been a few more admiring glances at him 2-3 years ago, but I think that might be an indictment of the entire situation when people are looking at someone coming in from the Championship as someone who can potentially do a job. It's a bit of a dire situation, isn't it? What kind of concerns me most is so much uncertainty around everyone who's already there. So Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, both contracts are up this summer. Klopp says he wants to keep Milner, but he's already 37. He's not going to be playing every week, and certainly not going to be playing central midfield every week, is he, if he does sign an extension. Henderson and Thiago are, over 30. Carvalho, Elliott, Jones, still teenagers, early 20s. There's only really Fabinho, who was of the kind of right age and contract length, and his form has fallen totally off a cliff. So I think everywhere Klopp looks across his midfield, there's an issue that he'd rather not have to deal with, and when that all combines, it's a massive headache.
It was looking like two of the big names, or two of the main targets were going to go in January, but there's a little bit of a question mark over that now. Moises Caicedo himself seemed to be pushing a move, to Arsenal. Arsenal had, I think, 60 and 70 million pound bids rejected. Now we don't know the sort of structure of those. We've only sort of seen the headline. It looks like Arsenal have called that off now and are going to go for Jorginho, which is an interesting one. And Enzo Fernandez, which looked all done last night, apparently not, arguing over structures. Chelsea don't want to go above that figure, but aren't prepared to sort of stump up the cash, and so they're in a bit of a wrangle now. So they're interesting ones, aren't they? In that Liverpool seemingly admirers of both players, but felt like right now that the fees are too high. I wouldn't be surprised if those fees come down a little bit in the summer, just because it suits the selling clubs, a little bit more. With Caicedo, it's very much the case of Brighton don't need to sell him now, don't want to sell him now, want to see how far they can go with this squad, and that pushes price higher. Similar with Fernandes, I think there's an acceptance that at one point they will sort of cash in, but they don't want to do it now. They're top of the league, they're going well in the Champions League as well, and so I think, I don't know what you think, but it feels to me like in the summer that those fees might come back down to an area that Liverpool might feel like is a little bit more realistic. Yeah,
possibly. I think from Caicedo's point of view, I'm not sure why he's so desperate to move this month. He's only 20, is he? 21? He's got years ahead of him. If it's the difference between leaving now kind of under a cloud, and I think De Zerbi's freely admitted that he's going to have to move on at some point because he's ambitious and he wants to go up the pecking order. And I think he's quietly accepted that's fair enough, but I don't see why he'd be desperate to move now and kind of ruin his standing with the Brighton fans when he can move in June to the same clubs. Same clubs are going to be interested. I was reading today that Arsenal didn't want to kind of ruin their relationship with Brighton, so they've stepped away.
Okay.
Now, they're going to be coming back for him in the summer. They might find that there's a little bit more competition. Maybe something Liverpool can look at if a deal can be done. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you find now that players have a good 2-3 months and the asking price just completely skyrockets. I think they brought him in 2 years ago for £3 million, didn't he? And was he on loan in Belgium last year, was it? So he's someone who's really has kind of risen up the ranks quite quickly. Now, if it gets to the summer and he's still a Brighton player, maybe it's one for Liverpool to have a serious look at if they can get him for a relatively sensible fee. Fernandes probably in a similar situation. I was told a few times really, and during the World Cup that there was no interest in him from Liverpool's point of view, but not necessarily no interest as in they didn't like him as a player, just more likely the transfer fee was just going to be...
It wasn't something they were actively trying to make happen.
Yeah, the transfer fee is ridiculous really when you think he's gone from someone who's been talked about as a £60 million player to double that in the space of 4 or 5 weeks. So I suppose if he does stay put, Liverpool do have a good relationship with Benfica, and I know Benfica have publicly spoken out about Chelsea's pursuit of Fernandes before Christmas, I think. So maybe that could be another one for them to revise. But that fee for Fernandes to me seems ridiculous. I mean, I haven't seen him loads, only really during the World Cup, but I think if Liverpool have 120 million earmarked for a all-star midfielder, I think it's probably going to be on Jude Bellingham and Enzo Fernandes. Yeah,
well, hopefully that Jude one can happen. Just before we sort of round up, I mentioned it a little bit before, you've written something this morning, specifically around the sporting director role, but a general look at Liverpool, how it's run, from Klopp up, I guess, at the moment, or at least Klopp sideways.
Yeah.
And as far as you're concerned, from the words that you're getting, it's very much sort of business as usual, and that's how they're seeing it run now. That might sort of surprise a few people, but and say, well, if Julian Ward, is feeling like he's stepping away, or if it's not working out or something, is he the man to take us sort of into the summer? But like we said before, he was doing deals on Christmas Day, so he's seemingly committed. Is your understanding that they are sort of fairly relaxed about it? They're going to take the time and think about, well, who is the right person to take over in the summer from him, and others as well who may be on the way. Yeah,
exactly that. I was thinking a couple of weeks ago that this is going to be Julian Ward's final transfer window as sporting director, and he hasn't been in for long, has he, in the role. He's been at Liverpool over a decade, but as the sporting director, officially anyway, it's been what? It'll be a year in between him starting the role and leaving. So I was kind of thinking, well, what is the plan behind that? Started, speaking to a couple of people and whatever else, and the idea is Liverpool are convinced that Julian's going to be working as hard as he has done throughout his entire career. He might be winding down, kind of working towards his final day as an employee, but they're totally convinced that he's not going to be phoning it in, for lack of a better phrase. He's going to be the one leading the drives for the players who come this summer. So if he leaves, at the end of the season and a player arrives in July, it's still going to be very much seen as his signing, and the work that's going to be done into that transfer will be his work. So Liverpool aren't too concerned about appointing a successor at this stage, and anyone who comes in will be working towards transfers in 12 months' time or 18 months' time. And anything done between now and the end of the season will be, ultimately down to Julian and the rest of the recruitment department who've worked alongside them for years.
The uncertainty does, I don't know, it can't help but get in the back of your mind though when the team aren't doing as well, and we've got a lot of injuries at the moment. That's been sort of commented on in the comments there. I think 17 listed. I mean, I'm not counting them all. I'll take that person's mass for it, but and then there's question marks about how long it took to replace the club doctor was sort of part of that, really. And you've got people from analytics side sort of leaving as well. Mike Gordon, I believe, sort of taking a step back, and it is really hard to tell, as supporters or even journalists, what is having an impact and what isn't, and what is contributing to the problems on the pitch at the moment. Is it one big thing? Is a lot of little things? I don't know, but it does all sort of combine to give you this feeling of slight unease. When, as I said, we both said at the top, Liverpool used to be, seen as the benchmark in terms of how a football club was run.
Yeah, it's totally fair. You look at all the moving parts. Do you think they recruited a club doctor? Was it just before they went to Dubai? And obviously, head of research Ian Graham is stepping down at the end of the season. Sporting director Julian Ward's leaving. Mike Gordon's taking a step back to focus his efforts on external investment and or of sale of the club itself. Billy Hogan, the CEO, is kind of looking more at the day-to-day running of the club now, and there's a lot of spinning plates and moving parts, and when the results suffer, you start to wonder, well, is all this, uncertainty in the background having an impact? And ultimately, it's fair to question it, isn't it? Because Liverpool are down in 9th, they're having a really poor season, and it's quite easy to point and say, well, you used to be so well run and you were winning things, and now it's all this kind of upheaval and uncertainty that, those behind the scenes will know what's going on, but supporters are only looking at the results on the pitch and the kind of question marks off it and putting 2 and 2 together, and I think it's fair to do that, because how else do you explain such a remarkable drop-off from almost winning the entire lot? Liverpool were only the 4th team actually to win the 2 domestic cups in the same season. I think that's kind of been overlooked because of the fact that they were going for the entire quadruple. So still an incredible season last year, and now you look at it and you think, well, what's gone wrong? You can't really blame it on an overhaul of the squad, because they haven't signed anyone, still the same squad, isn't it, essentially? So I think those questions are fair, and only those behind the scenes day to day will know the true extent of what is having an impact and what is just kind of overblown by the likes of us, I guess.
Well, listen, we'll keep looking at it. We'll keep monitoring. What is the rest of your day like? Is it just keep your ear close to the ground?
Yeah, I suppose me one big thing was Nat Phillips' future, but Konate's injury has kind of put the mockers on that. So it might be a quiet evening shift.
Well, listen, the Anfield Wrap is still selling. For the last day, today, our transfer deadline day closes. Our hat discount closes as well. It's 20% off these finishing up today. Is there a code, sorry, Michael?
It's 20% off on the site.
20% off on the site. Oh, you don't need to do any work. You just sort of jump on the site. It's still fucking freezing outside, let's be honest, isn't it? So it's lovely quality as well. You take one home, Gorst, don't worry about your head. All of them 20% off currently on the shop. So why not get yourself over theanfieldwrap.com/shop. I tried to rush that and made a bit of a mess of it. Hats on there as well, obviously loads of t-shirts and stuff like that as well. So yeah, someone's got to be selling something. It might as well be the Anfield Wrap. But you never know. There might be a midfielder. Ghosty's quiet evening might be ruined. The safe bet, if anything does happen, is between 7 and 8, where the Anfield Wrap are playing 5-a-side. So that is when we'll have to abandon it all, rush to laptops and phones and get working. So Liverpool Football Club do their best, to scupper everything that we do. So that is the safe bet, but we'll see. Thanks for coming in, Paul, anyway. Cheers, appreciate your time.